Okay, hi everyone. I think we can start. Mira, we can start, right?
Yep, go for it.
Awesome. Okay. So, first of all, thank you everyone for joining us. We are 5 minutes late, but we'll start now. And just a quick, so you know what the session is about, and I quickly introduced our speakers as well. But just quick, this thing. If you have any questions, we'll keep it for the end. Otherwise, you can also use the chat box, and I'll keep a note of that. Yeah, I'll just introduce you the speakers. So we have Ankur, who is an entrepreneur by heart with GDI, being his third startup. Now he brings over 15 years of professional experience and has led many large-scale transformation projects with national and international acclaim in areas of education, agriculture, food distribution systems, public works, basically a lot of things, including like animal resources, environment, a lot of things, right? So he is a firm believer in India's transformational journey for an inclusive and equitable nation, and is committed to using his time, skills, and learning towards this mission. In 2020 is when Ankur established GDI, which is an impact-driven startup committed to transforming the lives of individuals and communities for an equitable and inclusive world. Uncle leads overall strategy, growth, public development of the organization. And in short span of just 16 months, GDI is working across two continents, which is Asia and Africa, and is impacting more than 35 million lives. We also have Naman here, who is a Young India Fellow of 2018 and 19 batch, who's currently working as an impact consultant at GDI. Prior to GDI, Naman was working as Chief Minister's Good Governance Associate, which is CMGGA, in Yamunanagar district of Haryana. And through CMGGA, he was able to closely observe the governance structure and policy implementation at ground level as well. He has worked in areas of education, women's safety, solid waste management, skills, and employment, amongst many others. Right. So we can start the session now. Over to you, Ankur and Naman.
Is my screen visible to you guys?
Yes, the screen is visible.
Let me just bring it. Thank you, Pranav, for the introduction. So what I do is we have received certain questions from some of the attendees. So we'll try and cover those as we go along. But for us, I think the purpose of this thing is how the India through governance can be reformed. And what is the role, and we'll probably see what is the role young professionals like most of us on this call can play as India sort of travel this journey over the next few decades. So that's what we'll share, some of the interesting things which have been happening in India, which is really in the years to come, which will transform the lives of many sort of individuals and communities. And we'll focus on that, and we'll share our internal thinking, internal sort of framework that how these things will pan out and really improve the quality of life for many people in years to come. So before I do that, very quickly, again, this session is not about GDI, but just to give an idea where we come from and what we do. So the mission of the organization is to transform the lives of individuals and communities for an equitable and inclusive world. And how we do that is through a combination of three types of work we do. One is the governance transformation, where we co-work with the governmental entities. It could be at the district level, state level, as well as national level. And we help them solve the social economic large scale sort of a program. Some of the examples could be at a state government level, we sort of work with the state government to improve the quality of education for the entire public school system. It could be an example, could be in Delhi, how to improve the quality of air, which becomes a hot topic, and all of us also suffers because of that. So, what's the role government can play and really bring in those systems so the quality of air over the next few years sort of starts improving? That's the first area of work. Second area of work is the program management, where with governmental entity or non-governmental entity, where there is an existing program, where the efficiency or the effectiveness of existing program needs to be involved. So that's where sort of those are the kind of work we do. Some of the examples could be, many of you are from fellowship. So how to streamline and manage a fellowship so the impact delivery of that fellowship can be improved. That could be another one of the examples. The other example could be in the social sector. Some of you might have seen there is a new term which is coming out, is a financing tool, pay for outcome. So instead of paying for the input activities to the organization, you start paying on the outcome, how it's been done in various forms in the non sort of in the profit sector. So those things are coming. How you design program around that, and how do you ensure that the money of various governmental as well non-governmental money is going towards improving the outcome. The third is the strategic design, where we sort of work with leaders who are trying to solve the large scale problem. So we partner with them to sort of make sure that our what our mission is and what their mission is, if there is an alignment in that, that how we accelerate the journey for their impact creation. So that's an indirect way of creating impact for us. So that's the three kind of work we sort of do. Now setting the context for government, right? What is the role of the government? Because we might all might be coming from different sort of background. Just to give you an idea, right? How we think of government. So if you look at it, government is one of the prominent actor when the transformation of life of billion plus will be done. Government is a predominant player in India right now. The other player is the private sector, where players like large organizations like Tata, Reliance, Aditya Birla, the big groups, right? Or it could be the startups like Zomato, Flipkart, and those guys. They also create a lot of opportunities for low-income household, where their quality of life sort of improves, whether it's more access to entrepreneurship opportunities or creating delivery units by using the low-income household people. So how that happens, that's the second thing. And third is very important is the individuals and communities, because there has to be a inherent sort of action which need to be taken by individuals and communities. So only then the real transformation of this thing can come. So these three players needs to come together when the real transformation on the quality of life for billion plus will happen. So the focus for today is government, because that's the topic of this thing, how India can be transformed by using the lever of governance. So we'll talk about that, and we'll share whatever we have learned over the years. And I personally been in the sector for almost a decade. What my own journey has been, what I have seen working well, what are the opportunities, where the opportunities lies for all of us to rally behind government and using this lever of government to sort of really transform the lives. So first, let's look at why government is a critical sort of actor in this whole journey of improving the quality of life. First is there is no entity in India or globally which has the scale which the government has. So government pretty much can reach anywhere, and they sort of have the mandate also to serve a large section of the society, right? The second is reach. You all will be surprised the number of people government employs. It is just many times more than some of the larger groups like Tata or Reliances and those things. So it provides a lot of employment to many people. What it means is that there is presence of some of the other government officer in each and every village of India. Take an example of teacher. Now, pretty much all villages in the country have at least one school, and there is a government teacher who is a government employee. So the reach which government has, no entity in this world has that reach. Third is, which I talked about, is the mandate. There is a mandate which has been given by the people of the country for them to sort of provide services, schemes, welfare to all of them. So they have the mandate, they have the responsibility also. Fourth is the resources. They have both the one we talked about, the people and everything, but they have the budget. And we all know the billions of dollars of budget which government of India have recently sort of announced. So they have the resources, the financial resources and the non-financial resources, to make sure that if they leverage the system, then there is no need to create a parallel system which sometimes gets created to fulfill the inefficiencies of the government system. So that's why government is important, and we cannot shy away by not working with government to really get the mandate or get the aspiration of transforming the life of billion plus in this country. Now, typically, government project falls in two categories. There are some sector-specific program, and then there is enabling environment or enabling sort of levers which are created by the government to make sure that all the sectoral specific program their sort of delivery or their effectiveness sort of accelerates. So if you look at some of the examples of sector specific, it could be the education transformation, how to provide access to everyone in this. So that's a very education specific problem statement we're trying to solve. Agriculture program could be how to improve the quality of seeds for the farmers, the smallholder farmers. So that's a very specific need of a sector which gets solved. But when we look at enabling environment, there are things like digital ID, which in India is called Aadhaar. So Aadhaar solves for many of these things, right? It reduces corruption in education, agriculture, those things. It provides a dignity of life to many people who are not today counted as citizens because they don't have any official ID. So that provides inclusion to people in all the sector specific program which we are seeing above. Similarly, service delivery. The service delivery could be providing textbook to every kid in the public school system, or it could be just creating the sort of the roads which are needed in every village. So that's a service delivery from the government side, which need to be there, and they need to be programs or some sort of platform where the government to citizen service can be transferred. And third is the law and order. Why we sort of put it as enabling environment? Because when the law and order is in order, only then the education reform, the agriculture reform, or infra reform, or health reform, they can really get the sort of the outcome what are desired in that. So these are the broadly the two kind of program which government generally sort of operating. We all think, right? Most of us we think that no, government is a big lever of change, but at the same time, government has not done enough. Maybe a few years back, I think almost a decade back, I was also one of them where I also felt that government have not done enough and they should do more this thing. And I think at least my one statement has changed. I think government should definitely do more, but I don't believe government don't do anything at all. I believe that government has done a lot. And if we really look at it through the lever of governance, how some of the things have really changed. Sometimes in the day-to-day sort of criticism of government, we stop celebrating what government has been able to sort of do. And there are some examples, and these are the examples which are probably known to all of us. This thing. So I just want to say that government has played a very big role in making those things happen. First being eradication of polio. Only few years back, polio was a big challenge in the country, where many kids will get polio on an annual basis. And at some point of time, it just felt that India can never come out of a polio sort of a loop. But 6-7 years back, we became the polio-free country, and since then there has no sort of relapse of polio in the country. Second is access to education with Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, which was formed almost a decade and a half back. This thing when the access to education was a challenge. I'm not talking about quality, so don't get confused with that. And access is generally defined that if you have a school within the 2.5 kilometer of your where you live, then it means there is an access. And India being a diverse country where there are a lot of tribal areas, where there are very inaccessible areas like some part of J&K, some part of Northeast, and many part of the heartland also in Chhattisgarh and all. But government has been able to provide schools to pretty much every children in the country. So that has been a huge achievement for a country of scale and diversity of India. Third is, in a very quick period of time, in almost a decade, we have been able to provide digital ID, which is Aadhaar, to 95% plus population. And last we checked, I think there's 1.31 billion sort of resident who have been availed a digital ID like Aadhaar in a country like India, which is also very transformative. And the fourth is, again, there are many more examples just for this. I think one of the most advanced payment system in the world, which is UPI. I think this quality and this kind of system, many Western countries are also taking now note of this and trying to develop this kind of a system, which is very user-centric, which requires very low tech, and this can be availed, on a click of button, literally. Right. So those things have been possible just because government has done a lot. And I agree that government needs to do a lot more as well as we go along with that. But sometimes we just get so critique about the government that we just forget realizing what government has been able to achieve over the last few years. I think just before we get into the details of it, let me share. There are three types of government. If you look at it from the implementation perspective, there's a national government, there's a state government, there's a district administration. This is the kind of work we do. So we want to just share the kind of role these three government needs to play. So it becomes clear to all of you as you sort of explore opportunities in this sector, as you work with various layers of government. The role of national government is largely creating the policy framework. It could be examples of coming up with NEP, a policy, education policy, which sets the right mandate for the country to sort of come about. There is a digital ID, which need to be done by the central government also, because if every state governments try and have their own ID, then integration, the migration, and all those issues becomes sort of trickier in the country. State government, where the large part of state government is designing and implement the policy framework or the need of the specific state. That's where this thing is. And I personally believe that the transformation of this great country, India, will happen state by state as opposed to nation, because we are a combination of various states and the needs of every state is very, very different. So how different sort of state get transformed with the local contextualized need of it, and that's how the sort of country gets transformed. Some of the examples of this is again how if the learning level need to be improved, then state needs to take that responsibility, because the larger public schooling system in India is controlled by state government, not by the national government. They are KV Vidyalayas, but they are very far and few. But then the scale of public school system in India comes through governments, the state government, and not the national government. And the responsibility also lies with the state government to sort of improve the quality of education there. Third is the district administration, and before I get into the detail, the main purpose of district administration is ensuring that the implementation of these various schemes, whether it's the national government scheme or the state government scheme, happens at the last mile. So that's very, very critical sort of to do this. And or it could be just providing the public utility like roads, etc., making sure the potholes are sort of fixed and all. That's the role largely the district administration sort of plays. So just to summarize, largely the policy framework for the country is done by the national government. The designing or the implementation of those policies or the mandate which has been given is largely achieved by the state government, and district administration is someone which really implement these programs on a ground level, whether it's the state government, largely state government, but some national government scheme also which need to be implemented. And we work across the three layers of these. That's why we thought we just want to share some of the differences, nuanced differences between the three set of government. Very quickly, I'll run through this. So at GDI, like Pranav also mentioned, we are 15, 16 months old organization. So right now, in regards to governance, we are working in three different domains. Education being first, then the agriculture, and then climate. In education, we are looking at problem statement like how to improve the quality of education for girl children in the state. Then we are looking at problem statement like how we provide access to education during the time of COVID when the schools were closed. And then we are doing a program with Niti Aayog, where we are trying to figure out can through EdTech, the learning level can be improved and the procurement of government can be shifted towards outcome funding. So instead of government thinking about, I need to create infrastructure of EdTech, government start thinking we will only pay when this EdTech sort of provides or increases the learning outcome for the students in the public schooling system. On agriculture, the mandate we have in one of the states where we are working is around modernizing the agriculture and allied sector. So that's the sort of this thing, because the use of technology, the use of data has been very minimal in the agriculture system. On climate, we are working in Delhi because air quality, especially in the winter months, gets a lot of criticism, rightly so. So how do we use the government as a lever and try and improve the quality of this thing? But before that, the core team of GDI have worked on various other sectors, whether it's infrastructure, which is the public works, fellowship at the state level, animal resources, digital ID, public distribution system, and many others. So that's what we have done. I'll skip this. I'm just conscious of the time because we just started this thing 5 minutes late. So these are some of the examples of which I've talked about, the kind of work we have been doing with the government at different sort of level, which I've just covered very quickly. I'll talk about this in a sort of minute. So if you see Delhi, I'll give an example of Delhi air quality, where the mandate is improving the quality of air for 2 crore plus citizens in Delhi NCR region, because that's important. So some of the levers we are trying to do is the first one, if you see, the real-time apportionment study. What it means is that there's a lot of confusion around what's the real source of what's the real source of pollution in Delhi. So really creating that database, really creating that live system where everyone can understand, government as well as citizen can understand what really contributes to pollution in Delhi. The second is compliance of laws. There are a lot of environmental laws on industries, on construction. So how do we make sure that whatever is the spirit of those laws are, how they get implemented on ground? Third is citizen engagement, because citizen also needs to change certain habits. It's not only government which can come in and really solve pollution if citizens don't come and make those sacrifices, whether it's taking less number of private vehicle this thing, or whether it's about using the right practices when they are using the construction at their homes and everything. So how citizen gets involved in helping government to resolve this. Fourth is the hotspot management, because it's not that entire Delhi gets equal share of pollution throughout the year. There are some hotspots in Delhi. So how we create a very local, hyper local plan for those locations, so the air pollution quality can be improved where there is a bigger sort of a need. And then there is a war room which has been created by Delhi government. So how do we sort of manage it? So whatever data which gets created around Delhi pollution, it could be the violation, it could be some of the the air quality data which comes on daily basis. How that data is used to drive better decision making at all levels of government. So that's one example of how the government machinery can be leveraged or can be empowered to take right decision and the right set of initiative. So eventually, these things do improve, and they can be solved for millions of sort of citizens or residents of that area. I would now give, because these ideas might slightly early in this thing in the last year or so. Some of the ideas which have come up, and I just want to share that what is that transformative sort of an impact they can have to some of the very trivial problems we all sort of read about in the newspaper or we talk about with our friends and everything. So I'll talk about few of those ideas, and probably you will resonate some of those. So we have seen that formal credit is a big challenge in India. That millions of people don't have access to credit, and access to credit, why it's important is, one is that for businesses credit is important, so they can accelerate, they can sort of take the next level of growth. And more so here I talk about nano enterprise, right? I think the larger entities still find ways to sort of get the credit, but it's the sort of the solo entrepreneur or some sort of a nano entrepreneur, because they don't have any financial sort of track record. So it becomes extremely harder for them to take the credit. If we talk about individual, let's take an example of farmer. And we have all heard of suicide, which becomes a big issue every year. There are a lot of suicide in the farming community, and the bigger reason for that is the debt trap. Because these farmers, because they don't have the credit at the time when they need credit to buy seeds, fertilizer, to prepare their land, and many other things, buying pesticides and all. So they end up taking credit from the middleman or some of the informal channel. And the interest rate of those are in the range of 30%, 40%, 50% interest rate, which is even twice of the credit card interest rate for all of us. So it becomes extremely deterrent, a huge deterrent for them to sort of survive at most time and thrive also. So how the governance lever, how the different way of looking at making credit available can really solve these challenges for many of those. So first, I'll before I get into this, let me just take you what's the situation as of today. So if you look at the very first graph in India from the low income household, these are the low income household numbers. So only 9 million people in India from low income household have access to formal credit, while 351 million, which is a large chunk of it, if you really look at it, don't have any sort of a way. Pretty much 97, 98% of the low-income household don't have access to formal credit. What we believe is that in the next 2 to 3 years, I think if nothing changes, if status quo remains, because the formalization of economy is happening, so we believe that again these are internally calculated number on some sort of parameters. We believe that this number 9 million will become 14 million. But there is a concept of open credit enablement network. If that really comes into the country, then we can really accelerate that inclusion in the formal credit to 39 million. So that's the impact it can have. So it can really 2.5 times of what the formal credit inclusion would be in the next 2 to 3 years. That's the power of open credit network. I'll talk about open credit network later. But first, I want to tell you what's the magnitude of impact this can have. If we look at it from the micro enterprises perspective, because the left-hand graph are from the individual perspective, but if you start looking at it from the small businesses, which I was talking about, the nano enterprises, the solopreneurs and all, today roughly 6 million, roughly 6 million of those have access to formal credit. There are roughly 62 million of these micro enterprises in the country, and roughly 10%, 12% have access to formal credit, and roughly 90% don't have access to credit. We believe that if this situation, you can read it from the screen, but if this situation remains, nothing comes in, the open credit network doesn't come, then probably this number of around 6 million will become somewhere around 10 million. But if the open credit this thing comes, then there will be 16 million of digitization, which will happen at 7 million. So roughly 23, 24. So almost double the number of people who will have access to credit. That can be done through open credit enablement network. So now let me take you through what open credit network is. So this is the architecture where the pilots have been going on right now. There are 8 to 10 banks, larger banks like HDFC, SBI, both the public sector bank and the private sector bank, which is on the left hand side. So they become, so let's actually start from the right hand side. So these are the citizens or the businesses. So right now, these people don't have the financial history. So because when you go for a loan, first thing bank asks is, where is your bank statement? What's the sort of the track record you have with us? Only then we'll talk about lending. So if that doesn't happen, then there is a layer of LSPs, which is the lending service provider. These are the players who will have the direct connect with the people or this micro entrepreneur. They will have some sort of a technological interface, because not every individual or micro enterprises will have access to technology. So they will come in, they will sort of onboard them on this LSP app. Then there will be set of account aggregator. So who will provide some sort of a consent where these people can share a lot of financial as well as non-financial detail. And what could be the example of non-financial detail which are there today in the bank? So maybe the account aggregator will say, give me the access of what your credit card top up has been for the last 6 months, right? So it can tell you that if someone has been topping up their phone by 600 rupees, 700 rupees a month, from that you can guesstimate the kind of income these people will have. So they will provide consent to that. Then this consent provider will share the data by not disclosing the identity of the person. They'll share some of the data with all the lenders. These lenders could be HDFCs of the like, or these could be like the SBIs, the PNBs of the like. And then based on the requirement of this individual through this platform, these lenders will provide a very contextualized kind of a loan. Someone who needs a 5,000 rupees of loan and they can pay that back in 3 months, while others might be 20,000 loan, but they need 2 years to pay. So they can create a very contextualized loan which is suited to the need of the individual. Today, those things are not there because they are standardized loan, and standardized loan never fit the requirement of each and every individual or business. So that's been the pilot has been going out and it's been successful. And it is showing, the pilot is showing that the loan disbursement to these beneficiaries can be done in less than a couple of hours. So where today they are taking sort of days and days to sort of apply for a loan, and most of the time they don't get the loan. While through this platform, this newer mechanism of open credit enablement network, where through financial data sharing and non-financial data sharing, by keeping the privacy of these individuals and businesses, a contextualized loan can be created by the lenders in a very quick around time. And that's how the formalization of economy happens, and that's how the access to loan happens. Government is playing a lot of these. Government will come out with regulations around this. I won't go into the detail. But that's the power of open credit network, where the formulation of credit to many millions of people can be done in a very short period of time. Why I'm highlighting this is because we all feel sometimes that government, if government will do something, it will take many years, a decade if not more. But this is something where there is a real possibility that in next 3-4 years only we'll see a significant delta in terms of what percentage of people can avail the credit. There are other issues in the credit, how much credit is actually available in the market, which cannot be solved through OKIN. Only the accessibility of the credit at the beneficiary level can be solved through OKIN. So that's the one example. Second, we talk about, because now internet is becoming a huge thing, and all of us probably can't even think of our life without the internet. But how the democratization of internet needs to happen for micro entrepreneur and the low income household. The benefit of internet can really be transferred to the lowest section of the society. So my colleague Naman, who has been sort of working on this idea, has looked at various sort of use cases. He'll talk about how this idea can really transform or leapfrog India's economy as well as the data need of a billion plus people in the country. Over to you, Naman.
Thank you, Ankur. So as Ankur mentioned that internet is one of the necessities of life, right? After roti kapda makan, internet is the next thing that we think of. But if we see the Indian population, right, the lower strata of the society, income-wise, 72% of them are currently not connected to internet. So how do we provide them internet, right? So there are two options. First is that telecom operators go and give them the access. But if we see companies like Jio, Airtel, Vodafone, etc., they are constantly increasing the internet prices. 4-5 years back when Jio came, internet was available for free for a short period of time, right? Then internet became a little expensive but still affordable. Now you will see that the focus of telecom operators has been on increasing the prices of their whatever the programs or the coupons that are available. Earlier, internet which was available for let's say 98 to 100 rupees per month has now gone up to 300 per month as well. Which means that internet is not really affordable for the people who earn let's say 10,000 to 12,000 per month. So how can the government or how can private players ensure that low cost internet is accessible to the millions of people across the world and in India especially. So government has come up with a framework called Wi-Fi access network interface, which allows people to resell the internet that they are available. In order to understand it simply, let's connect it to UPI, right? What did UPI do? UPI made financial transactions very easy for any common person. And now we can instantly do a transaction, and if we buy something out of a shop, we can instantly transfer the money using UPI. And it has really boomed the digital ecosystem in India, right? So let's compare how Vani and UPI are connected, right? First is the unbundling or disaggregation of various steps of the process. If we look at UPI, we might use Google Pay to transfer the money, right? But Google Pay doesn't own any bank. Google Pay is not a banking entity. But still, it can be connected to various wallets and it can be connected to your bank account to transfer the money, which allows many more players to come in and decide what is the specific service they want to provide. They want to be a UPI app like Google Pay, or they want to be a banking firm. Similarly, in Vani has dissected the service space into primarily two parts. First is the companies who are getting the bandwidth or who are occupying the bandwidth from the government and buying the spectrums. Second is who is actually providing internet to the masses. So now any person can, without any license, can resell their internet. We'll come to that in the later. Next is providing a common architecture. So through UPI, now we don't have to care about which bank account, which bank operates the bank account of any individual that we want to transfer the money to, right? We just need the UPI and the common architecture will automatically transact and automatically process the transaction to their account. Similarly, under Vani, there is a common Indian standard architecture which has been prepared, and global vendors are now being encouraged to comply to those Indian standards, so that there is a common architecture that is working across all the Wi-Fi hotspots in the country, and hence the transactions between them become easier. If you see the next point, it is so what UPI did. UPI has eased the transaction making, right? Earlier we used to have your bank account number, IFSC code, and 10 other things to transfer amount digitally to any person. Now it is as easy as click of a button and or scanning a QR code. Similarly, through money, accessing the internet is becoming more and more easier, where one time you do the registration on any hotspot, and you can use the same registration across all the hotspots across the country, right? Which also comes to the next point, which is that interoperability becomes very easy when it comes to both these ecosystems. In money, irrespective of the platform, you can transfer the money. Similarly, you can shift platforms as well. Suppose you have a bank account with HDFC and now you are using an app of Google Pay. For some reason, you don't like you don't like operating on Google Pay. You want to move to another app called PhonePe because they provide better discounts, so they provide better service. It's very easy to do, right? And it doesn't matter which app the Samuel person is using, because you can transfer the money irrespective. Similarly, at money, doesn't matter which hotspot you have paid for or which hotspot you are currently using. If you shift to any other hotspot, you can do it automatically, and you don't need to do any sort of new registration or any sort of new transfer. So if we go to the next one, it's low barrier to entry, right? If you see at UPI, if you have an Android or a smartphone in general, or an iPhone, you can just download the app and get connected to UPI and start using the platform. Similarly, under Vani, now even a shopkeeper, even a grocery store owner, or even a chai wala can install a broadband and start selling the broadband from his or her shop. They don't need any sort of license from any regulatory authority in India. Next point. Now comes the issue of security, right? Because internet, you can access a lot of information through internet, and your data is also exposed over internet. So in UPI, just like UPI has 2F authentication in place, which all the vendors who are using the UPI have to comply with. Similarly, Vani has also built in a common security thread and common encryption method, which all the vendors will have to comply to if they want to provide service through Vani network. So this is how broadly the two models compare to each other. And Vani allows a lot. Vani has a potential to create impact on a lot of different stakeholders. We cover three primarily stakeholders here, starting with the government first, right? Currently, if the government wants to provide internet, and a lot of governments are providing free public internet, right? Now, what the government does is they install their own hotspots, so they give out tender to any big company who will install the hotspots. Using money, government can move from a provider to a facilitator role, and hence just allow or enable the private companies to provide low cost internet to the masses. Second point, instead of giving a tender to a big company like any big telecom player, now what government can do is they can create employment opportunities by appointing or by employing or by allowing various micro entrepreneurs in their state or in their city to start selling the internet, and hence these micro entrepreneurs, these chai walas, or these shopkeepers can enhance their income. If you move to the consumer lens, then for consumer, the telecom operator, the 4G, 5G data, which is costing $300 per month now, consumers can start accessing internet at a low cost of 50 rupees per month as well. And the government can also provide free internet to a limit, and then citizens can pay to access more internet using the Bani model. Similarly, interoperability becomes also easier where you don't have to pay for multiple hotspots separately, and you can just buy one coupon and access it anywhere. If we see from the micro entrepreneur lens, right, which currently might be earning only 10,000 to 12,000, it has been seen, and this data comes from our field visits that we have done in the areas where this model is currently operating, as well as various reports that have been published by TRI also. There has been a 40% increase in the income of these micro entrepreneurs. Now, where is this increase in income coming from? First is the coupons that they are selling, right? Because if I want to access internet, I'll go to a shopkeeper, I'll purchase a coupon and start accessing the internet. Second reason is the increase in footfall. If they also sell coupons, it has been seen that there is a tendency among citizens or the residents of that area to go to that particular shopkeeper to buy their regular household stuff, which increases the footfall and the sale of their normal goods as well. So, and similarly, right, this was internet, having internet at these shopkeepers also provide a lot of income generation opportunities in terms of value-added services, where shopkeepers can start conducting some surveys, or they can start some sort of app promotions or any other promotion to earn more money through these services. So this is how Vani model has been evolving. And we have also done that. So these are the two models we thought of sharing with you, OKL and the one which is currently ongoing in the Indian ecosystem. We would also want to share two of our thinkings that we think can be the next big ideas and our thought pieces on the same. So handing it over to Ankur.
Yeah. And just to conclude this, right, PM Vani is a program or a scheme or architecture which was launched by the Prime Minister in roughly December 2020. So it's been slightly over a year. And this is also rapidly sort of entering into various cities, various states and all. And we believe that, it will help take the internet to one of the remotest places and provide internet at a very affordable sort of a rate through technology. So very, very important. I'm just conscious of the time, so I'll very quickly sort of go some of the things we have looked at. I'll skip this, I'll skip this, I'll skip this. Some of the things which we think is coding, right? The NEP, the National Education Policy, provides a framework where it says that kids need to be taught coding as a skill. And very recently, we internally thought through that how if the coding needs to be taught to the government school, the public school system from 5th class onward, what it requires. So we categorize that first they need to be ready pedagogy, which is suited to the Indian context. The second is delivery, and the third is the enabler, which need to be put in at the state level, sort of a level, to make sure that the vision of this particular program can be achieved. I'm not going into the detail because I'm just conscious of the time as well. The second is Aadhaar. We all have seen that Aadhaar has really stopped the leakage through various DBT has been possible because of Aadhaar. And during COVID also, when Aadhaar really came in handy, when government has to distribute food, money, and various other in-kinds of a scheme, how Aadhaar became this thing. So today, if you look at it, there are three layers in Aadhaar. One is the facial, that is called faceless, paperless, and cashless, which is through things like API, through which you can do the authentication. There is eKYC, which provides you paperless sort of this thing and all those things. And there's a cashless, where through UPI, Aadhaar-enabled payment systems and those things are built. What is today lacking is a layer, which is a consent layer, which allows the data to be securely sort of stored on the consent of the citizen. If that layer comes in, then Aadhaar is already a great sort of a system, but it really takes Aadhaar to the next system, and government is already sort of doing various consultation, various listing in the consent piece, how the consent also gets taken care of. So that becomes a great lever with Aadhaar evolution, because Aadhaar is a system which keeps on evolving, and that's the great thing which Aadhaar has done, that it has not stopped and becoming a static ID. It is really taking the sort of the good ID feature, which is globally accepted good ID feature, and taking to the next level, and that's what we are doing. There are some sort of what we have done. Don't know whether Pranav will allow me time, but I'll not spend much time in it. So there is this thing that how Aadhaar currently sort of shares the data, do the authentication, do the verification of this, but there are some challenges which exist, and there we are bringing in technology like blockchain and all. So how they can track the transaction and give the ownership of the data ultimately to the beneficiary. So even if there are some instances of where the beneficiary doesn't want this data to be shared to the same entity for one purpose, not for the other purposes. Those kind of things are controlled by by the citizens. So that's the internal sort of thinking we recently did to make sure that these kind of layers also inbuilt, and really the next wave of Aadhaar transformation can start. So I know I've been 2-3 minutes over, but I just want to pause here and leave the last 10-15 minutes for any question and answer, or anything that anyone has.
Thank you so much, Uncle and Naman. This was very, very interesting, and I'm sure like participants already have sent a couple of questions. But if there are any more questions, you can just share it in the chat. I'll actually start with the first question that we have got. They want to know what are the resources that we should follow to keep ourselves aware and logically opinionated in policy and governance space. And where do we find these resources? So what are the resources that you would suggest?
There are a bunch of this thing. I think regularly, government keeps coming up with that. But I think it's just following those organizations which are working in this field. There are many research organizations like there's CPR, then there's Central Civil for Society, there's ICRIA. These are the think tanks. Niti Aayog from time to time keep publishing it. Then there are organizations like us in the consulting field. We sort of work very closely with the policy makers. We sort of come out with what we have been doing through our LinkedIn channel, through our Medium. So there's an active blog where team members write about what they're working on, what kind of problems they're solving, their personal experience around it. So I think that just are good this thing, and there are other organizations also. Just following them continuously helps one to sort of being aware about what is this innovation which have been happening. But India is getting transformed rapidly, and it's very difficult for all, even for us who are in this sector, to be on top of everything. But it's just that you just need to just follow the right Twitter handle, probably the right set of organization, just to make sure that at least the maximum can be sort of availed.
Great, great. Thank you so much. I hope everyone's made some notes. And definitely, like, I mean, this was really, really resourceful. So there's one more question, which is, I mean, you can answer however you want to answer, but the question is around how do we measure impact financing for for-profit organizations?
Yeah. I don't know. In for-profit also there are various type of it. I think for us, I think if I talk an example of organization like us, I think the impact is very tied to the partnership we are working with, right? Because our role is more like a catalyst. So I think if any of the government scheme or program where we are partnering with, if that is achieving the intended sort of role, and sometimes these goals are different. For example, if we take an example of what we talked about, okay, right? If the mandate is can over the next next 2 years, can we really include 5 million citizens into ecosystem? That itself is a measurable thing, right? Because there is a set sort of unit which has been put out, and it's easier to measure. While some of the other programs like education, they become slightly tricky to measure, because if you look at it, there are various sort of measurement ways how you measure. There is ASAR, obviously, which is measuring the basic numeracy literacy. Then there are various third-party organizations which have their own philosophy to measure the impact on learning level. So that comes there. Then there is a whole bunch of things, right? But in most of the program we are running right now, there is some sort of a third-party evaluator which has been onboarded by either the government or by the funding partner. So they can see, we can learn also as an organization what are the things which has really been successful and what are the things which has not really, gotten the intended sort of outcome which was there. So that's for organization like us, but there is a whole set of for-profit social sector organization. There are a lot of ed-tech players, there are a lot of agri-tech players, and so forth, right? But every organization, from the impact perspective, I'm not talking about the commercial success, from the impact perspective, and most social investors look at those impact metrics, whether it's the scale, whether it's the depth of the impact, whether it's the width of the impact, and there are many more. And there are evaluators like ID Insight, there are JPAL of the words, there are various governmental entities also which internally reviews the program effectiveness and all. So they also come up with high quality sort of evaluation. Again, nothing can be 100% because the scale of the problem and the scale of this program is humongous, but provides a very good directional sense in terms of whether the impact has been created or not created.
Thank you so much for that. Great. You can keep like putting down your questions in the chat box. We have two more questions. Before that, for those whoever has joined, just wanted to also acknowledge the fact that the Delhi Alumni Chapter has, with the help of Naman, of course, who is also part of the alumni community, have organized this event, and we would love, like, this is your space. We can organize many more events. If you want like a second part to the series, we can definitely also talk about it. So thank you so much for joining. I also quickly wanted to ask the next question, which is around loans. So the question is, how are you contextualizing loans without sharing data?
No, it does share the data. It doesn't share other personal information. It definitely share the data in terms of what the account aggregator think is the credit worthiness of that person through financial and non-financial data, and then also shares what kind of loan is required by the user. They might not know who the user is, whether it's Naman, whether it's Ankur, whether it's this thing, before a contextualized loan is created. But other information is sort of made available to them through a layered sort of this thing without sharing all the personal detail.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Any more questions, you can directly put it in the chat box, or you can send me a direct message in case you want to be anonymous. We'll just wait for like the next 10 seconds if there are any questions. Otherwise, we can sort of come to closing. Okay, I guess that's all for today. I think this was really, really insightful and helpful. A lot of us were looking forward to this, and we have also, this is also getting recorded, so a lot of people are perhaps watching it on YouTube as well. So thank you so much, Naman. Thank you so much, Uncle, for your valuable time. I know must be a lot going on, especially on a Saturday, for doing this. So yeah, with that, just want to